Should we regret that Bulgarian scientists did not succeed in explaining the Vanga phenomenon and her clairvoyance? Definitely not, because Vanga herself, and in an ingeniously simple way, gave us a scientific explanation to clairvoyance. Has Vanga the saint left us with a teaching of hers? Definitely yes. Vanga's testament is the ultimate spiritual and scientific knowledge. A talk with Genady Grigorov, explorer. Vanga versus Einstein. How do Vanga and Einstein explain clairvoyance scientifically and prove that thought is in fact energy traveling faster than light? This is how they put an end to ignorance about the mechanisms of nature and man. Some of the viewers may find it strange to compare Vanga, the clairvoyant, to Einstein, the scientist. But facts prove Vanga to be a much greater scientist than Einstein, because Vanga knows much more about the mechanisms of nature and man, in comparison to the greatest scientist, Einstein, who says one thing and at the same time proves just the opposite, thus misleading all mankind. Here we are at Rupite, the place where people in need were received and helped by the clairvoyant Saint Vanga, who knew and saw everything. This is the most appropriate place to ask and answer the following questions. Does clairvoyance have a scientific explanation? How does Vanga the clairvoyant explain clairvoyance? What exactly is consciousness? What is the speed of thought? Is it faster or slower than light? Contemporary mainstream science gives no answers to those questions. The one who gives answers to them is the saint and clairvoyant Aunt Vanga.
I know the answers to those questions because Aunt Vanga herself gave them to me. The answers to those questions are not hard to grasp at all. She has given them to many people, and they are written down in the books about Aunt Vanga as well. Too few people have ever paid any attention to what she says.
You cannot understand the Bible because you're just going through the pages. It is a miraculous book. Each one, according to their level of consciousness, would understand the same text in a different way. If you start reading with proper attention and patience, you will find out how each time your knowledge grows with you and you probe ever deeper in the substance of real knowledge. When you read over the same sentences, they will have a different sound to you. Here, I'll give you an example. Take the book Genesis. It says that in the beginning God created heaven and earth. To a not quite knowledgeable old woman, this is something obvious, as she sees both the sky and the ground. To a younger, inquisitive and intelligent person, this sentence leads to different knowledge. In the beginning, God, the ultimate consciousness, created heaven, the spiritual world, and earth, the material world. This is the ultimate and absolute truth, the foundation of everything. If science had adopted that truth, we wouldn't be talking about secrets, about phenomena and miracles, and the development of life on Earth would be at a much higher level. But this time will come. Science will take the right direction and many secrets will be unveiled. When the body dies, it decays, and everything dies and decays. But there is a part of the body and the soul, I don't even know how to name it, which does not decay. The truth spoken out by Vanga must be written in the textbooks and studied in schools and universities. And not like it is now, studying Einstein's delusions and mistakes.
The word God is for me nothing more than the expression and product of human weakness. The Bible a collection of honorable, but still purely primitive legends, which are nevertheless pretty childish. No interpretation, no matter how subtle, can change this for me.
A letter from Einstein to the Christian philosopher Eric Goodkind from January 3rd, 1954. But let's start from the beginning.
Yoga? Why? Since when have you been practicing yoga? I have been practicing yoga ever since I was 15. What really impressed me was the longevity in health which can be achieved through yoga.
Yogis live for more than 300 years. They fast for 40 days and acquire clairvoyant abilities. They can lapse into a trance and so on.
Whatever happened to yoga? What happened is that as a consequence of wrong practicing and fasting, I had a mini stroke that affected my left cerebral hemisphere, where the center of speech resides. This is why now I have speech impediments. But why did you turn to Vanga? Does it have anything to do with yoga, the East, mysticism? What was the reason to turn to Vanga? The reason was that she was expected to be able to give me the answers to the eternal questions about the works of nature, the existence of God and the spiritual world, the immortality of the human soul. You mean that it was not mysticism, but the scientific and spiritual interest that lead you here? Yes, it was the scientific and spiritual interest. To me, mysticism, esotericism and theosophy are non-knowledge. When someone explains a phenomenon scientifically, it is no longer mystical and esoteric. Did you get an answer to the question that brought you to Vanga? I got my answer, but not literally. In a roundabout way, she directed me to the literature I needed to read and analyze and interpret in order to get to the answers to those questions. Is this why you wrote this book? I was asked by Vanga to write this book in order to give publicity to everything I learned about nature's makeup.
This is the book in question, entitled The Laws of a Stubborn Shopman. Those who are interested may read more about what was said in this documentary.
As years passed by, I became convinced in the following two things: that my limited knowledge gives me no chance to give explanations to those questions.
Does clairvoyance have a scientific explanation? How does Vanga the clairvoyant explain clairvoyance? What exactly is consciousness? What is the speed of thought? Is it faster or slower than light?
It is obvious, and there's no doubt about it, that there's one person who knows the answers to those questions, and this is Vanga, the saint, who knows and sees everything. So I took a decision and obtained a border permission, and then I got on the train to Petrich to visit Rupite. I did not enlist and advance for a visit to Vanga, neither did I have any acquaintances to help me get to her. I had heard that when a man has very important questions, Vanga herself calls him to her. So, with some kind of impudence, I went and stood before Vanga. She didn't chase me away, but she didn't call me either.
Where are you from? What do you want?
I'm from Sukhudol. I have questions about the works of nature and man and the human brain, and also about the speed of thought. Is it faster or slower than light? What exactly is human consciousness?
Oh, but you're so cheeky and insolent. Who are you so I should tell you firsthand about the mechanisms of nature and man and the speed of thought? But listen to me carefully. Since you want to know, You have to sit and read thoroughly. Then you analyze and interpret what you've read. This is the only way to get answers to these questions. And then you write a book. Now get going. Next.
When was the first time you came here? It must have been sometime around 1988.
It is for 40 years that I have been lapsing into trances, and I have never seen neither God nor Jesus Christ. But I know this: fire and light. This is what God is. You don't believe in God, but you want Him to help you? If you have no faith, don't come to me, for it is not I, but He who helps you. There is God, and if you keep silent for a while, even rocks will start speaking about Him. The same way blind people know that there is light, the same way crippled people know that there are healthy ones, so the healthy ones must know that there is God. Religion was built on the foundation of faith. The Bible says, "In the beginning, God created heaven and earth." God exists. Also, an immortal spiritual world exists. Human soul is immortal.
How can we summarize the essence of what you have written down here? It turns out that Vanga and Einstein say one and the same thing about the mechanisms of nature, although it may sound very strange and mysterious. But Vanga knows much more, and she tells it in a much easier and comprehensible way. Why? What does Einstein say?
From the addition theorem follows another strange and interesting conclusion. It can be demonstrated that there is no way to send signals faster than the speed of light in vacuum. This means that the time necessary for traveling the distance from point A to point B would be where V may take any value smaller than C. Then if we assume that U is greater than C, V can always be selected in such a way that T becomes negative. This means that there should be such a phenomenon of transmission where the signal gets to its destination before being sent. That is, the result would precede its cause. Although such a conclusion is logically acceptable, to consider the possibility of U being greater than C proven is a serious contradiction of all our empirical knowledge. In the beginning, 13.7 billion years ago, as a result of the Big Bang, the universe was created. The universe, or nature, consists of physics, matter and mind, consciousness and thought. A description of nature should include both physics and mind, but we have no idea what exactly consciousness is. Thought and clairvoyance present a mystery. In his relativity theory, Einstein says
that as a consequence of speed, material objects get shorter and time inside them slows down. As for the spirit, Einstein says that thought is a phenomenon that travels faster than light, and during that movement time takes a negative value. This is where he makes a grave mistake, because he claims that such a phenomenon does not exist.
Vanga says, "In the beginning, God, the ultimate consciousness, created heaven, the spiritual world, and earth, the material world." In order to stress this, she repeats it. So many different books have been written, but no one will get to the unconditional answer if they don't understand and accept the existence of the spiritual world, heaven, and the physical world, earth, plus an ultimate power you can call whatever you wish that has created us. Then Vanga describes the properties of physics and mind in the following ingenious and simple way by saying,
She says about matter that it is energy that does not endure speed and destroys itself.
The key concepts here are does not endure speed and destroys itself. Spiritual world, consciousness, mind and thought are all energy which does not fear speed and travels faster than light, while during this motion time takes a negative value and gets mixed up. This is how she is able to see in the past, present and future. Energy is immortal. The key concepts here are does not fear speed and time gets mixed up. It is because of the chasm that divides us that even the great powers have trouble transporting themselves in the form of matter. Matter does not endure speed, it destroys itself, but they have gotten the knack of it by transporting themselves in the form of energy. Energy does not fear speed. When I asked how do they know what the future is, she answered indirectly. Well, because of speed, time gets mixed up. To summarize what was said until now, I realized that all three sources of information, the Bible, Einstein and Vanga, claim the same thing. We have a beginning, that is God, the Big Bang, having created the universe, the physical and spiritual world. Both Vanga and Einstein describe the characteristics of the physical and spiritual world in the same way. The difference is the following. Einstein claims that the spiritual world is a phenomenon traveling faster than light, but that such a phenomenon does not exist. Vanga claims just the opposite. There exists such a phenomenon that travels faster than light, and it is the spiritual world. Thought belongs to that same spiritual world.
If I have gotten that right, Vanga and Einstein explained clairvoyance in one and the same way by saying that only a phenomenon moving faster than light is able to see the future. This is on one hand. On the other hand, they differ in the fact that Einstein renounces the existence of such a phenomenon while Vanga insists that it does exist.
Who's right? Is it Vanga or Einstein?
I don't believe in a God allotting awards and punishments, and whose objectives are strongly welded with our own objectives. I don't believe in the immortality of soul, although weak minds, having been possessed by fear of ludicrous selfishness, find refuge in such a faith.
An interview Einstein gave in November 1930 before the New York Times.
Vanga's statue stands before us. Vanga and clairvoyance are facts. By renouncing clairvoyance, Einstein renounced the fact that Vanga and clairvoyance do exist. Even more, he denies the existence of thought and man's ability to think.
What are the characteristics and properties of thought? The main property of thought is the ability to imagine for ordinary people and to see clearly, clairvoyance, pictures and past, present and future events. For example, an ordinary person is able to imagine what kinds of objects are there in the building opposite and how they are arranged without having been there, or what is going to happen 20 years from now. But those pictures would not be true and accurate. On the contrary, the blind, clairvoyant Vanga was able to see clearly what kinds of objects there were in the same building and how they were arranged. In 1980, she saw clearly how in August 2000, the Kursk submarine would remain underwater and the whole world would mourn it. Therefore, thought is energy which does not fear speed. It travels faster than light, and during that movement, time is negative and gets mixed up. And so she is able to see in the past, present and future. Since time has a negative value for thought, the latter does not age and die, being a product of an immortal spiritual world. Thought is not a product of the brain, not a process flowing between the neurons at the speed of light. As for the committee having examined her in 1968, Vanga says, "They were all clever people, scientists, professors, and all we had was idle talk. Why? It was because they were controlled and were not supposed to ask the central question. Had they asked it, they would have immediately guessed the answer, which they shouldn't have.
What kind of science is the one that denies facts and phenomena instead of explaining them? Facts prove Vanga right and Einstein wrong. This is how mankind gets deceived.
Obviously, the illiterate and uneducated Vanga, as some people call her, was right. And the greatest scientist, Einstein, was wrong in denying the existence of a phenomenon traveling faster than light, and thus denying the existence of thought, man's ability to think, and clairvoyance. This is sheer foolishness.
Isn't that normal? He didn't know Vanga. How would he know about clairvoyance and all those things we are discussing now? The thing is that while I was browsing the internet, I found out that Einstein knew and was a close friend to Freud and Wolf Messing.
And Wolf Messing was a clairvoyant of Aunt Vanga's category. In his relativity theory, Einstein explained clairvoyance without even realizing what he had done.
He explained it, but he did not realize that it was a grave mistake he made. Where does Vanga's gift come from? Is it from God or the devil? Is Vanga a saint or is she a devil's servant? Why did Vanga used to lapse into a trance? Why did Vanga used to talk to the souls of the dead? Should Vanga be proclaimed a saint? Does soul reincarnate? Vanga is both a clairvoyant and a prophet. The scientific explanation of clairvoyance by Einstein and Vanga proves that the spiritual world does exist, that there is God and that the immortal human soul exists too. Therefore, Vanga's gift comes from God.
There is only one God, no matter what anyone calls him, and we are all equal before God.
As Vanga lapses into a trance, her soul leaves her body, and she can directly get into contact with God and the spiritual world. But even without lapsing into a trance, Aunt Vanga is able to contact God and the souls of the deceased. By denying Vanga and the phenomenon of clairvoyance and treating it with resentment, the Church denies the existence of God and the immortal human soul. Thus we get to the absurd situation of the Church denying itself. But this could be forgiven. It is not the first time that the Church denies things and later realizes that it has made a mistake. The Church burned Giordano Bruno on the stake. The Church has to realize its mistake and canonize Vanga as a saint.
The various religions are trying to take advantage of anything they come across, but their time is almost up. Mankind is going to cast those chains aside. Religion is going to have a new task. It will be compelled to conform to the new era.
Since human soul is immortal, as Vanga and Einstein have proved, this means that soul does not die. And since it never dies, therefore reincarnation exists. So when Vanga talks to the dead, she is conversing with the immortal spiritual world. Vanga is God's emissary on earth. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that neither the biblical prophets, nor Jesus Christ, Buddha, Einstein, Newton, or Tesla have ever done so much for mankind as Vanga has.
There is an ancient Hindu teaching, the White Brotherhood's teaching. It is going to conquer the whole world. Many new books will be written about it, and people all over the world are going to read them. This is going to be the new Bible. Since we thought, time and weight have negative values, and speed and volume are infinite numbers, Their direct measurement with measuring instruments is impossible.
Are scientists right when they say that it is possible to measure negative time, negative weight, and the infinite speed of thought with material measuring instruments? Obviously, scientists are wrong, because a direct measurement is really impossible, but this can be done indirectly with the following experiment.
Imagine a highway. It has 3 lanes in each direction. In the middle lane, there is a vehicle traveling at 100 kilometers per hour.
It gets ahead of the cars in the right lane traveling at lower speed. And on the left side, it is being overtaken by cars traveling at high speeds.
We can say for sure that the vehicles in the right lane are traveling slower than 100 kilometers per hour, and the vehicles in the left lane are traveling faster than 100 kilometers per hour. But we don't know what their exact velocities are.
By analogy with this experiment, we can take a ray of light traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second and imagine that parallel to its ray, a thought is traveling at infinite velocity. If thought was traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second, then there's no way it could reach the future tomorrow and see what's going to happen there and then.
On the contrary, the ray of thought of the clairvoyant Vanga would reach the future, which is tomorrow or 20 years later, and she would see exactly what was going to happen then.
Thought travels faster than light and has the ability to see past, present, and future events.
This experiment shows that thought travels faster than light at infinite speed.
Vanga says that if time is a thread, then it is a thread rolled into a ball. What does that mean? It means the following.
If time is a thread, then it is a thread rolled into a ball, Vanga says. This means that after a certain period, events repeat themselves. For example,
ignorance and lack of knowledge that reigned at the time of Copernicus concerning the mechanisms of our solar system were just immense. Science and the Church considered the Earth to be the center of the universe, with the Sun orbiting around it.
ignorance and lack of knowledge about the mechanisms of our solar system that reigned in religion and science before being explained by Copernicus are comparable to the ignorance and lack of knowledge about the properties and the origin of consciousness reigning even today in religion and science before being explained by Vanga.
But with the coming of Vanga and the scientific explanation she gives to conscience and thought, she proves that thought travels faster than light at infinite speed. And now we are able to define what exactly consciousness is. Why are you giving 2 rewards of 5,000 lefts each? I'm giving a reward of 5,000 lefts to the person who proves that clairvoyance is not a fact. I'm giving another 5,000 lefts to the person who finds another scientific explanation to clairvoyance except the one Vanga herself gives, which is that thought travels faster than light.
Unfortunately, the following ridiculous situation is at hand. There are pseudoscientists, madmen, fanatics and dogmatics, Einstein being one of them, who do not acknowledge clairvoyance not because they're unable to explain it, but because they are questioning its factual status. Yet we are lucky to have such valuable normal scientists like Natalia Bechtereva, Georgi Uzanov and many others, for whom clairvoyance is an undeniable fact and who openly and frankly confess their inability to explain that fact scientifically. I am aware that this puts me into conflict with the pseudoscience committee because of the facts about the works of the human brain which we are unable to explain but cannot turn down either. I myself had a personal meeting with Vanga. I went there aiming at unmasking her, but when I met her, I became convinced about the super abilities of her brain. And now, no one is able to convince me that Vanga is not a phenomenon but just a charlatan. Her gift is a fact, which means that the brain is able to do all those things. But as it turns out, scientists do not even need to explain clairvoyance because it is very well explained by Vanga. Why is the issue of whether clairvoyance is a fact or not artificially created, pointless, absurd and mindless? It is because nowadays anybody can browse the internet and watch in a controlled environment once or 1,000,000 times or as many times as they want the documentaries about Vanga. Phenomenon 1976, Thus Spoke Vanga, Vanga, and find out that the results of watching them are always the same. Clairvoyance and Vanga are facts. Vanga's word is law because she draws information from the spiritual world, which has infinite knowledge. Ever since humankind came into existence, there has not been a human being with more knowledge or clairvoyant abilities than Vanga. Vanga the saint and clairvoyant is God's emissary on earth. She is the greatest universal spiritual teacher who ever lived on earth. This is because she solves even the most complicated, tough and insoluble scientific problems in an extremely easy and almost offensively simple manner.
How do you think? Why do the science and the church not want this phenomenon to be explained in a popular and accessible way? With the view of the fact that the explanation Vanga gives is so simple and plain and easy to grasp by any person having even elementary education. By reading Vanga, scientists are well aware what the explanation of thought is. So they have no excuse for claiming that clairvoyance does not have a scientific explanation. But why? Why wouldn't they? Where do you see the reason for that? They deny the facts. In my opinion, their aim is to conceal the real knowledge about the works of nature and man, and thus preventing the physical and spiritual growth of mankind. This is about science. And what about the church? The church, why does the church oppose Vanga? Why does it turn down those people having that gift? They are doing it by force of habit, following only what the Bible says. But it is obvious that the church is wrong. And it is not for the first time. This has happened for too many times in the past. They used to deny the heliocentric system. They used to persecute its supporters. They used to burn them all the stake. But finally, truth triumphed and the church realized its mistake. We must not try and deny everything that the church and religion say. They are right by saying that God exists, that the soul is immortal, and that there is a spiritual world. So the church and Vanga are unanimous about this. Here both sources of information state one and the same thing. But in my opinion, the time will come, and I hope that it comes sooner, when both science and the church will come to realize their mistake and will uphold the position of Vanga.
Those quotes by Vanga and Einstein have great scientific value because, first, Einstein was obviously wrong in claiming that there is no empirical knowledge which proves the existence of a phenomenon traveling faster than light, where time takes a negative value and which is the ability to see the future. Second, it is a fact that such a phenomenon does exist, and it is called clairvoyance. By clearly seeing future events, clairvoyants like Vanga have proved that thought travels faster than light and that during that travel, time has a negative value. Third, since time has a negative value, this proves that thought does not age or die and is a part of a spiritual world. This also proves the existence of God. Fourth, it is a fact that Einstein's relativity theory proves the immortality of the human soul, thought, and the existence of God. But having not understood what he had proven, Einstein claims just the opposite, that there is no God or immortal soul. Fifth, the illiterate and uneducated Vanga, as some people call her, scientifically proves clairvoyance, the fact that thought and the human soul are immortal, and the existence of God and an immortal spiritual world. Sixth, the clairvoyant Saint Vanga is the only human being having ever really understood relativity theory and what exactly the Bible says. Why is this ingeniously simple explanation of the works of nature and clairvoyance that Vanga gave us not being studied in schools and universities? Why is Vanga, who unites science and religion, faith and knowledge, being rejected and denied by mainstream science and religion? Is it because mainstream science and the church have made a pact, aiming at concealing the real knowledge about the works of nature and man, thus preventing the physical and spiritual growth and perfection of humankind? With his relativity theory, Einstein paved the way for creating the atomic bomb, but also for creating the spiritual bomb, by explaining the properties of consciousness. Alas, the atomic bomb was created, and the spiritual bomb wasn't. It is claimed that the classified third prophecy of Virgin Mary from Fatima is about Bulgaria and states the following. A small Slav nation, Bulgaria, will pass on to its bigger sister nation, Russia, the most ancient knowledge, and this will change the world. If the claim is true, this means that the absolute knowledge about the works of nature and man that Vanga the Saint gave to Bulgaria and Russia will change the world.